In our prayers, we pray Berosh Hashanah Yikatevun Ubiyom Tzom Kippur Yechatemun, that the book is written, our verdict is written on Rosh Hashanah, but it's sealed on Yom Kippur. And the prayer continues, the holy prayer, Mi ba'esh u mi b'mayim, who will perish in fire and who in water. And we need to add this year, Mi b'korona u mi b'tu'una chalila. Mi ha'ne'edar shichyeh u mi yamut. And we as a dog unit who search for missing people need to ask, which missing person will we have the merit to find alive, and which will we find dead, and who will we not find this year? And some of the things I'm going to say today are things I heard from Rabbi Yoel Schwartz, Shlita, and they're very interesting and appropriate for us. I mean, we're looking at a world that has gone upside down with this corona. A shattered economy, illness, people dying, fear. Of course, we know the two opinions whether how severe the corona is or isn't, but nobody argues. The fallout of the economic fallout is horrendous. And we know that if somebody becomes tamei on Yom Kippur, the law is that they must really, really search in their ways and do tshuva, because that's a really, really bad sign for the rest of the year. And when we don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, that's a really bad sign for horrible sounds that we'll hear at the end of the year. And what can we say in a year when Jews are closed out of the synagogues, and so many people are not able to pray with a minyan, and if they're able to pray, it's with such huge restrictions? What can we say about a year like this, when the shofar was blown and not blown, heard and not heard, when it's not just a matter of people being impure? Look at what's going on around us. What can be said about this? And so I want to focus on some things that maybe will give us hope, so that we do not despair. First off, we should know that the Gaon Vilna is quoted as saying that a magifa, a great magifa, a great plague or pandemic will come upon us before the redemption. And as we learned in our last shiur about Parshat Hazinu, that in the end of days, the hand of God will be seen through a great remedy and cure. And we know the position of the Netziv that we have quoted several times, that Gog and Magog is not necessarily a war at the end of the days when everyone sees a great Jewish victory in the hand of God, but Gog and Magog could also be interpreted as a nagif, as a pandemic, as a plague. And interesting to note that Chatam Sofer says that Tafshin Pei Aleph is a sign, Tishbat, Ashba, is a sign for Me'ashpot Yarim Evyon, like we say in our Hallel and the Tehillim, from the depths of the rubbish will come, will be uplifted the poor, and that's something, that's something which is symbolic of our year. We've had a rough year in Tafshin Pei, and maybe that the words of the Chatam Sofer, God willing, will come true here, and that we'll see an uplifting of the poor, of the sick in this year. And there's something else to bear in mind. We've entered into the 73rd year of this Commonwealth, of this state of Israel, rebirth of Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. This is the third time that we've passed through 72 years. The first time was with King David and King Solomon, and their rule together, the first Beit HaMikdash, the first temple, was for 73 years until the destruction. And we saw that also with Malchut HaChashmonaim until Hyrcanus. We see also a 73-year period from the time of Shimon until the time of Hyrcanus. And now we have entered after Yom HaTzmaut, we've entered into the 73rd year of the state of Israel, which means that this is a very, very critical time where we can make a decision, where we can do tshuva and like many rabbis quote the various Talmudic references based on the Tanakh, that from the third time that we return to Israel, the third Commonwealth, there will be no exile. So let's hope that in this third Commonwealth, in this third rebuilding of the state of Israel, of course it's not where we want it to be, and much of the period between the first and second temple was not what we wanted it to be. Was not the if it was, we would have already seen Mashiach. We were exiled because of our sins. Let us hope that this time, like the rabbis teach us, from the third time that we return to Israel, that there will be no exile. Now, and if so, then we are now in that critical year where we have to make that decision. Will we choose life, or will we choose death on a personal level and on a national level? This is the critical time, and there is every reason to believe that, as the rabbis taught us, that in this third return to Israel, there will be no exile. And if so, then we are ototo, as they say in Hebrew, we are there, and we are living through a period right before redemption. Also, there's something important to note. We know that God punishes the Jewish people, and God gives us an opportunity, and in a cycle of 40 years. We're going to read the book of Yonah, and we'll see the significance of 40 there, and we see what happened 40 years ago. What happened 40 years ago? That was the time of the retreat from Sinai, where we retreated from the sanctification of God's name. We liberated the land in 6 days, and then we surrendered the land the pagan government surrendered it to Egypt in Yamit and the rest of the Sinai. And what happened? And if that's true, then we are now in a period of time where once again we have the opportunity to do tshuva, to usher in a redemption. The 73rd year, the third Commonwealth, 40 years, that's the period, that grace period that God has given us so often. We see that with punishment and reward throughout Jewish history. That there's 40 lashes and 40 years in the desert, and we're not going to go on with that because it's getting late and it's Yom Kippur. So what I want to say to all of you is that we're living in a special period. So the question is, so okay, this is the great test. Right now, this is that critical period. 73rd year, 40th year, the Magifa, that could be the last Magifa, the last plague before the coming of Mashiach. Okay, so what do we do? What do we do to pass the test and to make the third Commonwealth a permanent one that turns into the building of the Beit HaMikdash and the coming of Mashiach? What do we have to do? And so the Ramchal says something very interesting in Mamar HaGula. He says that the Beit HaMikdash is the or to the world, is the light to the world. The temple was that light. And after there was no temple, so we have little temples, we have the synagogues, and it's like little lights, it's like, to give us some light, to give us some hope, until we get it together and Mashiach comes and we come back to the land. So, what can be said in a period where we don't have the little light? We don't have the big light, we don't have the little light. There's no coexistence between the big light and the little light. Because if you have the big light, then what is the little light going to do? What is a little crack in the wall going to do? A little light coming out, it's not even seen. It's one or the other. During the first Beit HaMikdash, we only had the big light. And there were no synagogues, no such concept as a synagogue. The synagogue came only during the time of the Second Temple, and it wasn't in Israel, it was in Babylonia, where they needed that light, and where there would be continuity to Torah life afterwards. What can be said now? We have no synagogue. We have no minyan. We have no possibility to go to the synagogue. What can be said of this period? Is it not a sign that we are entering into a period where we're going to see the Beit HaMikdash? Maybe that's what it's all about. Maybe it's all about the fact that we have rejected, we have violated, we have forgotten the temple. Maybe that's what it's all about. Maybe God is telling us something. I don't need your synagogues. Not in Borough Park and not even in Jerusalem. I need the temple. And now it's time for the big light. And these are all things which hopefully will give us hope and give us direction what we need to do to bring a speedy redemption in our time and to stop this miserable pandemic.